Buenas and Hafide, and welcome to the second episode of Estorian y Linibren Gera, Stories of Our War Survivors. I'm Chelsea Cruz, your host for this series. In this episode, Mrs. Irene Ploak Scambaluri will be sharing her recollections of World War II here on Guam. She will walk us through the day the Japanese invaded through our island's liberation. Stay right there. This episode of Estorian y Linibren Gera will continue after this. Hafide and welcome back. I'm your host Chelsea Cruz and I'm here with Mrs. Irene Ploak Scambaluri. She will be sharing with us her stories of life on Guam during World War II. Hafide, Mrs. Scambaluri.
And Hafide to you too.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you.
All right. Well, would you mind telling us about how old you were when the war first started, and do you remember what life was like back then?
Well, I was only 11 years old when the Japanese start bombing the island. We lived in Agate because my father was in the military, in the Navy, and he was stationed in Agate to attend to the people in that area if they're sick, because it's connected to the hospital. He's a pharmacist mate first class. And we were having breakfast that morning on December 8, 1941, and all we heard is planes flying above us. And we saw that they were dropping black objects. But we never knew whether there is a war. But later on, well, after we had breakfast, my grandfather called us by his phone and said, get ready, and my driver will come with his car to pick us up because war has been declared. So when his vehicle came, the only possessions that we took was no food at all. We only took some clothing and important documents. That is all we had we did not take anything else, just those two. So when we went to Hagatnya, where my grandfather's home is, it was right next to the palace, because my grandfather was connected with the governor's office. He was the inside man, as they call it. So then when the Japanese keep on bombing, my grandfather said it is not safe to stay in Hagatnya. So we got in the car again with my father, and we went to a ranch in Adaco Barricada owned by my grandmother's brother, Gregorio Dueñas. So when we came to the ranch, we were taken care of by the Dueñas family. They fed us, they sheltered us, and we stayed there. And then some days later, 3 Japanese soldiers came with an interpreter, Japanese Nishi, they call it. And they were looking for my father. And my mother said, Irene, go look for your father, because my father was hiding in the jungle. So I went in the jungle and I kept on calling my dad, Daddy, Daddy, until I found him. I said, Daddy, you have to go and surrender, because if you don't, we're all going to be killed. There's 3 Japanese army soldiers and the interpreter, excuse me. So he took off his shirt and he broke a branch, a talantanga tree, and he tied his shirt to the stick, and he held my hand, and we walked out. That's it. I cried because we never knew whether we were going to live that day. So he was captured. They stripped him naked, then they dragged him, and then they put him in a car or a jitney or something, and they took him as a prisoner of war. And they took him down to Agana, and there was a building next to the cathedral, and that's where all the prisoners were taken to. So that was the last time we ever saw my dad, until we went back to Hagatnya, and the Japanese already invaded Hagatnya. So my grandfather's house was still intact. The Japanese did not bomb the buildings in the island in Hagatnya. Every building was intact, was not destroyed. But then we had to go look for my dad. So we went to the Ghana Cathedral, that building next to the cathedral, and there were all the prisoners. So we brought coffee, and somebody gave us bread. So we took that over to whether he could eat it. So he had his coffee that morning. Then when we came back the next day, there was no prisoners. The building was empty. So we saw this interpreter and we said, "Where are the prisoners?" And we were told that they were shipped to Japan. They walked from Agana Cathedral, next to the building next to the cathedral, all the prisoners to the commercial port to be put in a ship, Japanese ship. But before that, we could see what the Japanese did to him. And all the other prisoners, they would make them naked and make them walk to the Paseo de Susana in circles, according to ranks there. And a white Japanese horse would be just going around and around them. And that's the time, 2 days later, I think it was 2 days later, when they were shipped out. So that was the last time we ever saw our dad. So we stayed in Agana. We did not have any food because we get our food from the commissary. So thank God that we have some relatives that gave us chicken or eggs and even rice. And during that time, rice was rationed by a local family. And every month we would get our 1 gallon can and line up to get rice. So lucky they were giving us at least 1 gallon of rice for 1 month. So when we had this chicken, my mother would have the chicken, she will boil that chicken for 5 days until we could even eat the bones. But the best part of the chicken, she took out, and it's only for my grandfather and grandmother and my baby sister, which was only 8 months old. So we didn't have no provisions at all. So we were forced, Japanese forced us to go to school. So we attended school with the other Romanian children to learn to read and write. So I was pretty good. I finally spoke very little Japanese, but I could understand. And to write, we had 4 Romanian teachers and 1 Japanese teacher, which was in the Navy, and he was so mean to us, especially like us, military dependents. He would pull my hair because I was very frail, and I had freckles and long blonde hair, and he would pull my hair until he gets tired of it, and he would slap my brother. But we cannot talk back, right? And so while attending school, they would put us in a truck early in the morning, and they would take us to a place up in Tai, so to plant vegetables for the Japanese. And after we did all our chores there, planting, pulling the grass, and then plant, we would go back to school. The next day, we were the students, and my brother and my sisters, and my sister and myself, and my other brother, my cousin, I would say, David. They sent us out to the ocean, the beach, to gather they call it the cucumber slugs. They call it balotis. We would gather that and put them lay it on the tin roofing and cut it up and dry it. After all, we took out everything from the inside of that, we call it balate in Romanian. Sea slugs, I think they call it. But we dry it, then after it's dried, we put it in gunny sacks and deliver it to the teacher, Japanese teacher. Then the same thing again the next day. And then they would send us in the jungle with our gunny sacks to pick wild papayas. When we get a sack full of wild papayas, we would boil the papayas in the back of the school. But the funny part is that why that only my brother, myself, and my sister would stay behind and keep on cooking all the papayas until they're done and carry it after it's done to the teacher's house. So he gave us double work, but not like the other students. But since we're military dependents, everything is double. So that goes on, and we start going to school with other Romanian students, and that went on 2 years, right? So we were really, really sad because we didn't have nothing. Luckily, like I said, we had cousins that would come with a chicken or eggs or vegetables. So any vegetable that we see or any fruit on the road, I would take my machete and cut it and take it home. And if I see a chicken, I will run after the chicken until I catch it to take it home. You know, because we ate nothing but for 3 years, we ate nothing but sweet potatoes. Then the Japanese told us to get out of the house, my grandfather's house. So we found an abandoned building across the street. So we went in and we stayed there. There were only 2 beds, and one bed was reserved for my grandfather and my grandmother. The rest of us will sleep on the floor with the Romanian mats, without sheet, no pillow, nothing, just like that. Then later on, days passed, months passed, we heard planes. It was the American planes.
Well, thank you so much. We do have to cut to a commercial break, but we will be right back with more of Mrs. Gambalery's story.
No problem.
Mr. Sam, my dear Uncle Sam, thanks for coming back to one. Bring me the landing for July 21. Mr. Sam, my dear Uncle Sam, thanks for coming back to one.
Welcome back. We now continue with Mrs. Gambalery's story as we head to our liberation.
Like I mentioned before, we were still in Agana when the American planes came and started bombing the island. So we had to run. So we ran and we hid under a bridge. Now the Agana Bridge, but it's Chipapua. We sheltered there under the bridge. And then at that time also, my grandfather hid in a bunker, and the American planes shot him, and his eyes was hanging out from its socket. So, and he had no clothes because of the ashes. And my cousin David his body was full of shrapnels. But we took them and we walked to the road going up to the what you call it? Oh. So anyway, we walked up, and then we knew that my grandfather needed medical treatment. So of all things, here came a Japanese corpsman from the Susana Hospital was burning. And here comes a Japanese Navy man, and he said, I will help you. I will treat your grandfather. So he ran back to the hospital, got bandages, and he bandaged my grandfather's eye. He pushed the socket back, but yet the blood was coming. But he told us, run, run, because the Japanese will kill you. He was an angel. He was an angel to us. So then we walked up San Ramon Hill with my grandfather walking and he was injured. Then we came to a ranch where the fire is at. We found a ranch there and we settled in that night. Then the next day, a Japanese soldier told us to get out and follow the other people that's on the road. So we went out and we walked for 2 days and 2 nights. And this other couple, this family, saw us and said, I see that nobody's taking care of you. We'll take care of you. That is the Oka family, Tomas and Sefa Oka from Sinanya. So they fed us. They carried my grandfather and put him in a carabao. And so 2 days and 2 nights, we slept on the road until we reached Menengon. When we were in Menengon, we were with 60 people in the camp, in one small area that Mr. Oka erected, and he fed us. Then so many days later, here comes the Americans. So when these Americans came to this camp, they told the people in the camp to follow them. So all the Ghanaians, of course, and my family, we followed the American army, I think the Army of Marines. While we were going up the mountain, we were stepping over Japanese dead bodies. We didn't care. I didn't care. I was stepping on them too. And it was rainy. That was the rainy season until we came to up at Mount Tengo. We stayed there and in the rain, and we slept on the ground until big trucks came in, American trucks, military trucks, and loaded the Ghanaians into the truck. And some of them were stationed in Sumai. In our group, we were taken to a staging place in Hagåtña at Pigot Cemetery. And at that time, the Americans furnished us a little pop tents so we could sleep. And they fed us with oats and corned beef hash. And guess what? Everybody got sick. Everybody was sick in the stomach. They were going all over the place because imagine 3.5 years you didn't eat American food. And after eating the oats and corned beef hash, everybody was sick. Everybody had to go to the river to clean up. And that river is now across the governor's office in Hagåtña. See that river there, next to the cemetery? We drank, but when we were in Menengon, there was a river. In that river, every person in the camp, we drank that river, we bathed in that river, we did wash our clothes in that river, and we drank the same water right there in Menengon, and no one got sick. No one got sick. Imagine that. It's a miracle. Because nowadays everybody gets sick for drinking dirty water. Well, that happened, that people were lucky. Well, but anyway, when we were stationed at Pigot Cemetery with the other people, we were fed and sheltered by the military. So we were there for days. But we didn't have enough little pop tent, that my brother and my cousin had to go back to the crypt, in the cemetery. All the crypts where all the deceased, the dead people are put in. Well, they were all destroyed by the canyons from the ship. So each of them got in, and that's their sleeping place. So they slept in the crypt in the back of the cemetery. Yeah. At that time, you don't think about dead bodies, So anyway, when we found out that the Americans already took over the island, my father sent one of the military men to go to Agana Heights and find out whether another house that my grandfather owns. My grandfather has 3 homes in Hagåtña. 2 in Hagåtña and 1 in Agana Heights. Now been occupied by a former governor called Gutierrez. That was my grandfather's summer house. He only goes there to read. And then we later found out that we could stay there. So we stayed there until everything was settled. The Americans took over the island, and months or year right after the atomic bomb, my father came home. When he came home, he was brought in by military jeep, and my mother said, "Your daddy's home. Come and kiss dad." We didn't kiss him. We ran away. We didn't want to kiss him or hug him because he looks like a zombie. He was skin and bones, like a skeleton. So then my mom said, "You have to come and kiss daddy." So we did. So after that, we continued our lives back to normal, going to school and everything, So we were happy that the Americans came. I thank them for liberating us. And even if they destroyed all the homes in the island, every house was destroyed. And my grandfather was shipped out on the first plane to have his eyes treated. And then my father came back. So then we continued our lives back to normal, going to school, getting clothes from the American Red Cross, shoes that doesn't fit us, but we still wore it because it's free and it's American Red Cross. So that went on until we rented our home and stayed in Sinahonya for years. Then I got married and have 4 wonderful children, beautiful children, and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So that's my life.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in again next week as we continue our stories with more World War II survivors.